both of Alexander and some of Hercules, of Hector and Lysander, and such great names as these. But of all...
Hello and welcome to today's Battletech review. Today we're going to be looking at the Lancelot, and I'm happy to be talking about this thing because I've been fighting with a broken down Viking for the past couple of days here, and I'm happy to just go with a mech that I actually like working on. It's actually quite odd to say that here because it's not a popular mech and it has somewhat of a bad reputation, especially during the Succession War, but it is a overall good mech. It does all sorts of things, including very weird things like being a decent AA gun mech, which is just not something you'd expect from a fast cavalry unit. It is named after that legendary or misunderstood, it's hard to say here, knight from the King Arthur legends. You can probably look into Lancelot and all the stories about him, and there's some pretty good series talking about him, even in the 20th and 21st century. So let's get into it. It's the good people at Krupp that released the original Lancelot in 2581, and some people might be surprised that it's that early for a mech with the kind of equipment that it has. It was really sold as a low-maintenance extended deployment battle mech, and the original idea was actually to have a medium mech to do that particular job, as the SLDF was ready to do that big Star League aggression war against the periphery. Krupp knew better and decided to make the thing a heavy mech instead. It is the first big war between battle mechs, and you're going to see a lot of things that are in transition during that era. The Star League had already more advanced technology than the periphery, but they were still pushing forward, and this is what we really see in that Lancelot. You have some of the most advanced piece of hardware of that time with a brand new XL engine and the newfangled double heat sinks. The problem that came with that, though, was that the Lancelot was about double the price of the Guillotine, which was the standard heavy mech that our friends in the SLDF was using, and, well, it was also more or less a cavalry heavy mech with mostly energy weapons. So, what did the Lancelot really bring to the table? While the performances of the Lancelot were noted to be pretty good, the SLDF quartermaster did not have the guts to actually place massive orders for them because they had other things to spend a whole lot of money on. Really, the Lancelot's price was the main issue at the time of release, but as time went on, well, it became less and less of an issue, and Krupp kept selling new models and new things to the SLDF, but it never was fully embraced in one of the most common machines of the time. Fast ground cavalry units were not super common back in those days. What people wanted for cavalry unit was generally jump jets, so the good people at the SLDF didn't quite know what to do with the Lancelot, especially since it had some odd idiosyncrasies with it, with a targeting computer being able to take down airplanes on a mech that was supposed to be fast and repositionable. It's odd combinations that actually work quite well if you're in that particular market. As it turns out, the Lancelot did keep serving, and it ended up serving both sides of the MRS Civil War, as Kerensky's forces used them in cavalry units, and MRS added the control of the Krupp factories, mainly on Mars, and used them as anti-air platforms. All facilities that were building it, however, were basically leveled by the end of the MRS Civil War, generally by Kerensky's forces, leading Krupp to lose quite a bit of money and basically killing the design going forward. With the Exodus and the First Succession War, well, the remaining Lancelot died out quite quickly because they required those advanced pieces of equipment in order to stay around. Krupp was still helping various parties during the Succession War, but they were mainly paying their dues to Comstar since, well, all their factories were in the general vicinity of Terra. As the Second Succession War was going on, they did get approval to raise some capital by licensing the Lancelot out, and the chassis was sold to the Draconis Combine, and Lucian Armorwork got the contract to build something. It was a far cry from their most advanced cousin. It was actually not very good. But in the era of a mech is better than no mech, well, Krupp's got a steady amount of revenue from licensing the design, and Lucian Armor Work built an okay amount of them that ended up being destroyed because, well, they were not very good. As Krupp was starting to get more money issues, they got relieved by Comstar once again, as Anastasius Vogt decided that the factories on Mars needed to be reactivated during Operation Revival, and making them quite happy. The original Lancelot started walking out the production lines, but there were a bunch of upgraded models as well, which were supplied to Comguard and to friendly parties like the Rasselhague Republic. This, of course, led to the Word of Blake Jihad to have quite a few Lancelot in service as well, and the Word of Blake militias to have their own version of it as well. So the Lancelot got more common after the clan invasion. In all the ups and downs of the following era, well, Krupp was happy to just make money off the Lancelot again, and he honestly didn't care who they sold it to. So the Word of Blake got quite a few of them during the Jihad era, but since their factories were under occupation by the Word of Blake, they didn't get as much profit sharing as they would like. Then things got bad once again when Devlin Stone showed up to retake Terra, and most of Krupp's facilities were damaged or destroyed by Republican forces that were raiding them for parts, or damaged so they could not produce more weapons for the enemy, and so on and so forth. It wasn't until the late Republican era that the Lancelot production really resumed with a brand new model from Lucian Armor Work. Your basic Lancelot was the LNC 2501, which came out in 2581 as a next generation battle mech. Modern design to this particular standard will often come out as tagged as LNC 2597, and they're not the most frequent thing around, but being a decent enough mech, you will see some in some inventories. It uses some brand new technology with a 13 double heatsinks, which came out in 2567, and an Hermes 360 XL, which had just come out in 2579. This was basically the workhorse and the testbed for the XL engine technology. It was a 60-tonner that was able to go 97 kilometers per hour in a straight line and fire multiple big energy weapons at the same time, which was pretty much unheard of. It only had 9.5 tons of standard plates, which is a bit short for a mech this size, but the body was made with a special profile in mind, so it was a little bit lower, meaning that people had a bit of a harder time hitting it, and the targeting computer allows you to track multiple fast-moving targets at once, making it a superior anti-air platform, which, like most people say, is a little bit weird for a mech that's meant to be fast and agile. It works fairly well for that, though, because you can get into positions where you know the VTOLs or ASF are going to get, shoot them, move out of the way completely before they can fire back at you. I have seen Lancelots used to that effect fairly well. The original Lancelot was equipped with some of the best weapon available at the time, and they were all proprietary equipment for Krupp or Krupp affiliates, meaning that they got a very nice big chunk of revenue when they built those machines, but it also meant that they could not survive outside of supply lines very well, which is what basically killed it in the end. The main guns are a pair of Krupp Model 32 large lasers, which is backed up by a King Slaughter PPC, which is a little bit finicky. It's not the best PPC out there, but it's easy enough to put in and out of the machine. At closer range, you also have a Krupp Model 2 medium laser to round things out. This type of performance and weapon capacity is not something you would normally see on Inner Sphere machines, but you can easily see that it inspired quite a few different clan machines over the years, making that the Lancelot was a standard SLDF mech. It kind of makes sense, and it's the kind of things that they learned from and with. There is a really rare version. I haven't seen one of those in real life, basically. I know of it from paperwork, which is the LCN 2505, which was built in response to what was going on in the Reunification War, allowing it to become a cavalry machine and an anti-infantry machine. For this purpose, you take out the medium laser and 2 of the double heatsinks, meaning that shooting all of your big lasers will make you run a bit hot here, so you do have to be careful. But what you mount is a set of 4 Browning machine guns to be able to just mow down infantry in a matter of seconds. Not a bad idea, is just not something that was repeated over the years. It was meant for one particular situation. And nowadays, with the proliferation of battle armors, I'm not sure it would be as popular. Even though the original orders for Lancelot was not that huge, the SLDF did request an upgraded model from Krupp, leading to the LCN 2501 SL, which became more standard within the Star League, while the other parties within the Star League successor states in the future had the more common machine. The armor coverage remains the same by using 8.5 tons of ferrofibrous plates rather than the standard ones, and the heat exchange system is now composed of 16 double heat sinks, meaning that you have a little bit more there. The big difference is that you replace the large lasers and the PPC with a set of ER large lasers, giving you very good effective range at the cost of a little bit of firepower, and making this probably a better anti-air unit than what you had before. Krupp was working on a new upgrade kit for the Lancelot as the Ameris Civil War broke out, which led to the LNC 2501X coming out and a few of them getting in the hands of the Ameris regime. This one used an endosteel chassis and ferrofibrous to save on weight, and with the saved weight, added 4 jump jets in the leg of the Lancelot to improve on its mobility. The large laser also replaced with ER large lasers, which is a decent upgrade at the time. The problem really comes from the fact that the pilots did not want additional mobility on their Lancelot. With 4 extra tons, what they basically wanted was 4 extra tons of armor, or as much armor as possible, or additional heat sinks. Anything but more mobility on a mech that was already probably one of the most mobile heavy mechs in the market. During the dark days of the Succession War, the Lancelot was dying throughout the inner sphere because they couldn't get their parts replaced as easily as they should. Well, if you get the basic chassis for it and you try to replicate it, what do you do when you only have standard technology? Well, that's what Lucian Armor Works started doing in Second Succession War with the LNC 2502. It uses a pit band 240 rather than that 360, meaning you have a top speed of 64 kilometers per hour, which is quite reasonable for a heavy mech in its category, but it doesn't have the armor of a mech in its category. You also have 19 standard heat sinks, which will allow you to shoot both of those large lasers fairly steadily while you're walking. If you start running, you're going to run a little bit hot. If you shoot the PPC on top of it, you're going to burn yourself alive. But if you balance what you're shooting, it's not a terrible idea. Another problem with that particular model is how every bit of electronics is stripped out, so it no longer serves as a good AA gun either. It's just an average machine in an average setup, and it's not going to revolutionize anything. The good people in the Draconis Combine started calling the O2 the coffin for a pretty good reason. With the same armor coverage as the original, with much lower speed, and issues with overeating, but because even with a lot of heat sinks, if you shoot everything, it's not going to be all that great. It's going to cause some issues, and the pilots will probably die a horrible death. Weapons-wise, it remains the same as the original PPC, twin large lasers, and a medium laser, or maybe you could have taken off that medium laser and put more plates on, or maybe more heat sinks. But one of the advantage on that, though, is that all the lasers and PPCs and everything are now off-the-shelf part, fairly easy to find. A Lord's Light PPC, which is the most common thing in the Draconis Combine, Sunglow large lasers, and Victory 23R medium laser, which is probably a very standard one if you've ever worked with it. You will notice that it looks like a Defiance quite a bit, but it's a little bit different. There's a few minor differences in it, but you should be able to slot one for one. There is also the LNC 2503, which is crazy just because of the fact that build it with what we've got is what managed to create it. It dates from the Second Succession War, when the parts were getting extremely rare, but this one uses the decently common 300XL engine and whatever double heat sinks were stuck into that engine in order to work. It has 13 tons of armor, meaning that it's actually better armored than most of the Lancelots out there, and it's just a little bit slower at 86 kilometers per hour. It also features case in the side torso because it's going to need some ammo in order to run its weapons. To help control the heat curve a little bit, well, both large lasers are replaced with a rifleman's 5-class autocannon fed by a single ton of reload. The PPC is still on there, along with the medium laser, making this a really weird mech and not quite a Lancelot. It's the kind of thing that this sounds really good, and nobody really thought more than let's put whatever tech we've got left into a mech. And not a whole lot of those were built. They were in service as long as the parts were available, and it was somewhat reproduced later. We will see when we get to it, but that particular model with the standard 5-class autocannons is not in production at all. At the other end of space, the SLDF had a bunch of Lancelot, and a whole lot of them were upgraded for all their little wars and their little fighting in the clan homeworld. The first new model came from Clan Angry Monkey, as the Lancelot C is another machine that they use to lose more friends around. Clan Fire Mandrill is very good at losing friends, both in the clans and amongst themselves. The base specs remains about the same, 96 kilometers per hour, decent amount of armor for a mech its size. When you compare it to other clan machines of the same era, maybe not as good. But for the weapons, you get a trio of large pulse lasers and 16 double heat sinks. Perfectly reasonable. You can shoot all three of those things, and you're not going to run OTT. And in order to make anything fit on there, they just had to put an endo steel chassis. It didn't even need to be the fancy endo steel. The regular endo steel could fit as well. It's the kind of thing that was a transitionary model. You'll have some, if you ever see one, with the original Inner Sphere graded XL engine rather than the Clan XL engine, Inner Sphere graded endo steel rather than Clan graded endo steel. The only thing that really needs to be Clan graded is the heat sinks and the large pulse lasers for that thing to work correctly. In 2857, you had the Lancelot C2, which started release, and you shouldn't be confusing it with the Lancelot 2C, because there is no Lancelot 2C, but there's a Lancelot C2. You know what it means. It was a refit and production model, and it was quite different. It uses that endo steel chassis, but in this case, it needs to be the good clan kind. And you add a mask to the whole thing in order to give you a top speed of 128 kilometers per hour, because your Lancelot needs to be able to catch up with a Locust. Closer to the original, it packs a set of ER large lasers and an ER PPC on the mainline weapons, and it's cooled by 17 double heat sinks, meaning that you're going to run OTT, but not terribly OTT. It's not comfortable to pilot if you shoot everything, basically. At closer range, and to take care of infantry, a little bit more like that old SLDF model that they used during the reunification war, the center torso mounts a pair of flamers. I have seen a decent number of those also mount ferrofibrous armor rather than standard armor. It's an easy enough refit to do, and there is plenty of room in order for you to do that, meaning that there's a few different Lancelot C2 models floating around. Anastasius Fox gave the start building again order to Krupp, and it was like mana from the heavens for them because they needed the money at the time. They did bring out a 3060 upgrade kit for the Comguard as well, after building a whole bunch of the regular Lancelots with the 97 series, basically. And this new LNC 2504 came with an endo steel chassis and 10 tons of armor. The big change, though, is the addition of a C3I computer, replacing the medium laser in the center torso, while all other weapons are upgraded to ER versions, so a pair of ER large lasers and an ER PPC. 14 double heat sinks will be barely enough to keep you cool, but if you're smart about what you're shooting, you should be fine. And with that C3I computer, at least you know that if someone gives you some telemetry, you're going to it. As their little fight during the Jihad started going, well, the word of Blake militias needed mechs, and they didn't always have the best pilots or the best intentions in mind. They took the 04 as a basis for a new machine, and they put out the LNC 2506 in 3071. To save on weight, they make some little changes on there, putting a small cockpit, which makes it more difficult to pilot, but, you know, the pilots will have to live with it, and using an XL gyro, which saves you a decent amount of weight, at least, on a Lancelot. The C3I computer is moved from the center torso to the head, because there's now enough room because you have a small cockpit. The PPC is returned to a standard model to help you cool the machine down a little bit, And with the extra saved weight, you add a targeting computer to make sure that all those lasers and PPCs shoot straight. Not a bad idea with a C3 computer, targeting computer, and all that fancy bit. The problem really comes on with the Lancelot falls over and the gyro is damaged. This thing will just never be able to get back up. We also have another Word of Blake machine, which is the LNC 2508, which is, well, derived from the 06, but it's mostly derived from that weird, odd second succession war machine that had ballistics. Each arm mounts an LB5X of autocannon and a ton of reload, allowing you to carry both slugs and clusters, making this probably the best of the anti-air versions of the Lancelot, believe it or not. Heat sinks are stripped to the bare bones, really the ones that are built stock in the engine, and the armor is now 9 tons of light ferrofibrous to give you just a tiny little bit more armor, pretty much the same as the original, just by saving a little bit of weight. Lucian Armor Works production license for the Lancelot had more or less been dormant for a while here, and they were building the 2597, as a backup, but they had not been building any new versions of the Lancelot for themselves, and that came to a hand in 3147 when they released the LNC 2509. This one steals technology from Clan Novacat. I'm not sure if those lasers are actually built by Lucian Armor Works or they're from old Novacat caches, but each arm now packs a Clan ER large laser, and the medium laser is replaced with a Clan medium pulse laser. That gives you more range, more damage, and quite a bit of accuracy on that medium laser. The PPC is replaced with a plasma rifle, which is a smart thing to do. It's a good trade, in my opinion. And you've got 2 tons of reload, so you will be able to shoot it for a good period of time. The whole thing is cooled down by 15 double heat sinks, which is barely enough still, but, you know, it should be letting you shoot those ER large lasers to your heart's content. The body is now made with 10.5 tons of the strong NV ferrofibrous, so you are quite tough for a Lancelot as well. Another thing that has been going on is that Krupp jumped in bed with Clan Wolf as soon as they toppled the Republic of the Sphere, because to be quite honest, Krupp didn't like Stone even more than they didn't like the Wolves. Production of upgraded Lancelot C has been seen, and there's a few of them floating around. There's advanced tech being used in some of the new Lancelot Cs, Lancelot C2s coming out of Krupp's factory, some of them using ferrolamellar, some of them using reflective armor. We've seen a few different things floating around. I haven't seen an actual upgraded model. I haven't seen actual production specs of anything, but you should be wary here that Lancelot Cs might start being more common in the near future. Unlike a lot of mechs, the Lancelot was in production for quite some time, but since it suffered massive attrition due to its role and overall toughness and just what it needed to actually run, it means that it isn't as common as other things like, let's say, a rifleman, a thunderbolt, or an archer, as an example. It's also one of those machines where I feel that there's not much room for upgrades unless you go with an entirely new chassis with endo steel, where you could use that to save some weight for more heat sinks, more armor, or something like that. You basically have to rebuild the Lancelot from the ground up if you wanted to make something quite different from it. It's honestly not the worst mech out there, and you can tell that it inspired quite a few different things in the clans over the years, but it certainly has a place as well in pursuit lance, flanking units, and other things that need to go real fast to grab a target or to catch someone running away. It's not meant to be used as a hammer. It really is a scalpel, and that's what you should use it as. So I thank you very much for listening to me for so long. I hope you guys have a very nice rest of your day, and I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.